pursuit of happiness. These are the foundational rights we as students all want. But what actually is happiness? What can we define it by, or rather, how do we define it by? Nowadays, we have a habit of thinking that whatever we want will be whatever makes us happy. Now, this does sound equal, and it is, in most cases. But is it really this way? I summarized a few certain equations summarized from previous psychologists, and some of them include want nothing, do anything, and you have everything. And another one is reality minus expectation. I believe that these are definitely ways that we can achieve or reach happiness, but I don't think none of any of them really define happiness or really pin it down to its definition point. So I'm going to talk a bit about happiness itself. The chemistry behind happiness is dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine. And I'm going to talk a bit about the word itself, happiness, as well. Sorry, technical problems. To the original page, please. Okay, so about the word happiness itself. It originates from the Old Norse word hap, which means luck or good chance. Now, it also has other roots from the Old English word havoc, meaning equal. So I realized a small pattern here, meaning that the word happiness seemed to have always been closely linked with what the standard of being happy was. So I guess nowadays, a standard of being happy is successful, as it definitely is something that we're all aiming for. So does success really equal happiness, or does it directly give us happiness? So it turns out these two actually aren't equal, or it's just a cause and effect that doesn't happen in all cases. So success is getting what you want, and happiness is wanting what you get. I believe there is a core difference between these two. So next I'm going to talk a bit about some things that are often misunderstood as happiness. So first, about vanity. What is vanity? Vanity is excessive pride that is negative in most cases, that is built on a person's qualities, traits, appearance, etc., that make a person feel confident about themselves. And how do we find this kind of self-confidence? I believe that it is built on previous memories of superiority. So in our world, all things are measured in relative comparison. So to know that you, or let's just say something, is good or bad, you have to have something that is not as bad or not as good to know it has like a relative good or bad. So you have to know that you previously had this feeling of superiority. So that gives you this feeling of confidence that you know that you will do well in a similar situation. So it does give us a similar feeling of happiness as we feel superiority and better than others. And this is part of human genes, so I'm not explain for it, but I believe that this can eventually evolve into happiness as this long term, you can compare it with yourself. I believe that happiness shouldn't be built on the failure of others, but be built on oneself. So I believe that this is the core difference between vanity and happiness. So following on to something else, obsession. Now this sounds like it doesn't have anything to do with happiness, but the feeling we have when our obsessions are fulfilled are actually very similar to happiness. So what is obsession? I'm just going to define it really quickly. So obsession is something that or a thought that continually preoccupies a person's mind. So perhaps, in other words, it's like a curiosity, want, desire that was never fully fulfilled. Even the person always wanted more for this certain object, thing, or objective. So it's always there. Now, when this obsession is slightly fulfilled but not neutralized, we feel something like happiness, but it is not happiness. It is short-term and dangerous, and it is a medical condition that needs to get checked. So how we can understand obsession is like sand on a beach. For example, you have a hole in the sand, but you try to fill it up with more sand. However, where do you get this other sand to fill this hole with? You have to dig another hole in order to get this sand. So then, keep on getting more and more holes, and you're never able to completely fill it up, because you're constantly making new ones as you're filling old ones. Does that make sense? Alright, thank you. And, okay, so one last thing I'm going to differentiate between happiness is relief. So relief, in other words, it's like the bad expectation you have of something happening minus the bad event itself happening. So I don't think that this is happiness because it's actually built on the basis of something bad happening. I don't think that happiness should be built on sadness itself. So I think that happiness and sadness, they're sort of like dark and light. They can't exist without each other. And as I mentioned before, things can only be measured relatively in our world. They can only exist when they are compared together, like dark and light. So what's relief? Relief is like the color purple. It's built on the basis colors red and blue, which respectively symbolize the sadness and happiness that comes with relief. And it's built on the basis of these two colors. They cannot exist without any one of them. But that's different between happiness. That is the main difference. So enough about what's not happiness. What is happiness? Happiness is desirable, delusive, subjective, and constantly changing. Which brings me to the idea of my speech today that there's no set formula for happiness. Okay, so if there's no set formula, that means that there's a different meaning for everyone. Because that different things have different meanings for everyone. The meaning behind for everyone is different for every single situation. Meaning that this thing might make someone happy, but might not make a person be happy. So that's it. Happiness is different for everyone. So I'm going to talk a bit about the dilemma of happiness, which is why we're never happy for too long. So if you're never happy for too long, for example, you get a book, or you say the latest iPhone 15, you get it, and you're happy for like a week or so. But then after that, you're okay about it. Then if that happens to you, then congratulations, you're a human being, because that's in our genetics. It means that we're never fully satisfied. And that's normal, and that is what pushes the human advancement and our society developments. But then that also brings to other problems like greed and never-ending desires and things like that. But we're not going to go into detail about that because that's not our message today. Just a small point of that. Okay, so again, so what is this happiness? I've been talking about it, but I don't think I've actually talked about what it is itself. I don't think it's a height or a point that we can reach, but actually an amount that we can gain. And in fact, it's actually not opposites to negative emotions like some would think, but they're different. And in fact, I believe that they may overlap and even coexist in some situations. So that brings me to my next point, decreasing happiness and increasing happiness. Like decreasing unhappiness and increasing happiness. Does that sound different to you? Or does that sound like the same? Same? Okay, so they're very different. So, for example, you just got yelled at by your coworker, your boss, your friend, and you're feeling down in the dumps. So, you're feeling down, right? And a friend comes over and comforts you and says, hey, it's okay, they're just in a bad mood, you're actually so great, and you feel better. But do you feel happy? You might not. That is decreasing the unhappiness levels in yourself. But then, if your friend comes over and says, hey, are you okay? Let's go out to the movie, to the parks, or do something that you like. And then, hey, you feel happy. But does that mean that like the harm that's come to you from your like getting yelled at by your coworker or boss, does that mean that's erased? That just means that your increased happiness levels have risen. But does that mean that your unhappiness levels have decreased? That is like the main difference that I believe can be explained with this example. So happiness is one of the easiest and hardest things to gain. As I mentioned before, it's different for everyone. So that brings me to what I want to talk about today. What do teenagers see happiness as? So I asked a few of my friends and classmates who seemed to be free during evening study, and it wasn't like an experiment-based one, but it was just something that I wanted to ask to get a basic idea of. And out of the 8 people I asked, only 2 of them found happiness as a process and not a product. So I think that this is reflecting a serious problem that teenagers don't actually get what happiness is. So I think that this is truly lacking in our education, and this is what we need to focus on. And now some people might say now, so what if it's lacking in our education? Isn't it part of the human nature to be happy? Well, that is correct, partly. But we shouldn't ignore the fact that the numbers of mental illnesses have risen greatly. It's undeniable and unmistakable. So does this mean that we should teach them how to be happy? Well, as I mentioned before, there's no set formula, so it's going to be hard to teach them how to be happy. But I believe that by teaching them what is happiness and giving them correct education on this, we can greatly decrease the numbers of mental illnesses. As the main cause of mental illnesses is like the lacking on happiness levels in teenagers in our society today. So I believe that if we put this into our curriculum and helping them understand what happiness is, and that it's different for everyone. And setting it as a process rather than a goal to achieve, it can really decrease these levels. And I think that it is very important for teenagers to understand happiness. And right now, only our curriculum, as mental health is also something important that we already have. We don't have how to prevent problems, for example, how to prevent depression, anxiety, but we don't actually have anything on how to be happy or what is happiness altogether. I think that this is something that we should definitely consider putting into our curriculum altogether. So last of all, I would like to end with a quote that I got from my survey, which is from Liang, aka my amazing cousin. He described happiness as stripping off life to its essence, finding the simplest yet most rewarding joy. I think this is something that we can all use for reference. And I hope this speech was able to help everyone have a better understanding